Hey everyone, I'm going to show you today how to make a basic chicken liver pate. It's really easy, and believe it or not, even though it's made from liver, it's really delicious. When my kids were little, I was trying to get more organ meats into the diet, and I used to make pate and tell them it was meat dip, and they loved it. And then when they got older, they found out what was in it, and some of them turned up their noses for a little while. But it is actually something that's really delicious, and I think we just get this a bit of a block when we think of organ meats, but organ meats are so nutritious. They can be up to 100 times more nutrient dense than other meats. So we really want to get these into our diet. They're so good for helping with your gut health and hormone health and brain health. There's an impressive variety of vitamins and minerals in organ meats that helps to detox the body and helps to build healthy bones and blood. But probably some of you have memories as a child of being served fried liver or liver and bacon or steak and kidney pies, and maybe you didn't like them. I know I didn't. But when I grew up and started having pate, I was like, oh, actually, this is really nice. So making pate is a really good way to start if you're a little bit scared of organ meats. You can also give it to children as a spread on their toast, like on a grain-free toast or with crackers. And some children actually prefer little balls of pate, like you can chill it really well and roll it into little balls. And some children prefer that to meatballs and burger patties because it's much easier to eat. It's very soft. Get the kids started on it young, and that's the best way. I've got a gorgeous grandniece who loves her pate, and she's 8 months old, and just her mum puts a bit of pate on her high chair table and she just goes crazy for it. And it's just so good for them, so nutrient dense for all of us. So this is a really simple recipe. I made this recipe to suit early gaps. If you want to, you can take it another level. Elise Comerford, the nutritionist that I work with, has made a version where you add bacon and mushrooms, and if you want to, you can do that. So that's really delicious. But if you want to just have it plain and just keep it simple, this is a really good recipe. So I'm going to use the Thermomix. You can use a food processor and stovetop if you prefer. So first of all, we just need to chop up garlic and onion. So I've got 4 cloves of garlic. They're quite large cloves, but you know, that's how I am with garlic. I like lots. And I've got half an onion. Pop those in. And I'm going to add 2 large sage leaves. There we go. I've got some rosemary here. I just want about a 1/4 teaspoon of the chopped leaves. So I'm just guessing here, maybe a teaspoon of the whole leaves. And some fresh thyme. Just however much you want really, but you know, about a 1/4 or half a teaspoon. That's probably about 3 little stalks is what I've used. But it's really to taste, it doesn't really matter. Okay, and I'm going to chop all of that up for 3 seconds on speed 7. So you can hand chop that or use a food processor or pop it in the Thermi. So there we go, finely chopped. Now I've got some chicken stock here. I'm just going to add 3 tablespoons of chicken stock. This is a 20 ml tablespoon, metric. Straight down the sides. And then I'm just going to cook that for a couple of minutes, 2 minutes, 100 degrees, and speed 1. So if you're using a stovetop, you would just put it into the saucepan and simmer it for a couple of minutes. And then we're going to add the chicken livers. So here I've got 400 grams of chicken livers. If you find them a little bit icky to handle, what you can do is have them partially frozen, and you can put them in and chop them up partially frozen, and then just add another minute or 2 to the cooking time. Mine are thawed out. So if you're doing this on the stovetop, you will need to chop them a little bit first, but if you're using the Thermomix, you can just pop them in whole. If you want to add the bacon and mushrooms, what you do is chop that up with the onion, garlic and herbs right at the start. and then continue with the recipe. So that's the only difference. Okay, so now I'm going to add the liver. And I know this seems a lot, and it is a lot. 300 grams of ghee. Mine's melted because it's hot weather here. And we want about like a heaped teaspoon of salt. And some, I usually use coarsely ground pepper, but whatever pepper you prefer. I like the Aussie pepper. And just put in a sprinkle of that to taste. Now, if you're cooking this on the stovetop, what you would do is have everything in the pan, just like you have it in the Thermomix, just like I have it in the Thermomix here. You'd have everything in a pan on the stovetop, and you bring it to a simmer. And once it comes to a simmer, you let it simmer for 5 minutes, and then take it off the heat, transfer it to a food processor, blend it up really well, and if you want to, you can put it through a strainer, and that's it. You don't need a long time to cook livers because they cook very quickly, they're very soft, and also if you overcook them, they'll go rubbery and gritty, so you want to just barely cook them. So traditionally, when you cook livers, you cook them until they're just a little bit pink inside. So that's okay. If you see a little bit of pink, they still will be cooked. So in the Thermomix, what we do is actually blend it up first and then cook it. I'm just going to blend that for 20 seconds on speed 7. Show you what that looks like. Okay, and then we're going to cook that. I'm just going to scrape it down first so it's all in there. You're going to cook that for 5 minutes on 100 degrees and speed 3. While that cooks, I'm just going to melt some ghee on the stovetop, because we want to use the ghee to seal the tops of the ramekins if you're pouring them into ramekins. I know this recipe uses a lot of ghee. It's very nutrient dense. Ghee is a superfood. So if you have small children or babies that you're weaning, think of ghee as one of the first foods. It's a very nutritious fat. Okay, that's done. And now can you see the difference? That's thick and it's gone brownish. So that's cooked now. So what we need to do is give it another blend so that it's nice and smooth, and then we can pour it into our ramekins or silicone trays, whatever you've got. Okay, you might want to just give that a little taste. Make sure it's salty enough. It's perfect. All right. So that's really smooth now. It's probably a bit hard to tell. But if you want to, some people will then strain that through a metal sieve, so a really fine sieve. And then that's often called a parfait, liver parfait, when it's really smooth and mousse kind of texture. But I find for just everyday use, this is perfect. Now what I'm going to do is pour mine into silicone molds, because then I just have a small amount that I can take out of the freezer at a time. So I just store mine all in the freezer. Once it's frozen in here, I just pop them into reusable bags or containers and then keep them in the freezer. Once you take them out of the freezer, then they'll only last 1 week in the fridge. So that's why it's good to just have some small ones in case you're the only person eating it. So let's just fill those up. You may need to use a spoon. Yeah, I think I'll need to use a spoon. All right. Okay, so that filled up 2 silicone molds. And then what you can do is grab some little sage leaves and pop them on top if you want to, and neaten it all up. And then you can pour over the ghee. Okay, I'll show you that in a sec. Okay, so I've just barely melted the ghee. I've got some sage leaves on top, and what I'm going to do is just tip a little bit of ghee on top of each one to seal it. So you want it to cover the pâté. So you may have to sort of press the pâté down flat with your fingers or the back of a spoon to make it flat so that you can pour the ghee over. And then the little leaves are just sealed in under the ghee. And there we go, that's going to go into the freezer now. And I'll show you what it looks like once it's set. Now, I know that recipe uses a lot of ghee. If you are able to handle butter, you can use butter in the pâté instead of ghee, and then just use ghee on top for sealing the pâté. So the reason why I made the recipe with ghee was because when we first started GAPS, I couldn't have any dairy, but ghee was one of the first dairy products that I could cope with because the milk solids are all cooked out. But if you're okay with butter, it's completely fine to use butter instead of ghee. So if you don't have any ghee made up and you want to make pâté, just use butter. P.S. If you don't have any ghee made up at all, you can leave the ghee off the top and put a lid on the container and then freeze the ramekins. Or if you're using silicone molds, then you can leave the ghee off, freeze it, and then straight away pop them into bags and seal them. So the ghee just helps to keep it longer in the fridge or freezer without it getting that dryish top. Just pop them out. And there we go. Stick them in a bag or leave them in the silicone molds in the freezer and just take them out as you need them.